In a world where most people watch movies and then forget about them, these brave heroes join forces to watch them again and then talk about them. Join them in their epic journey as they go back in time, a decade and beyond, to revisit and break down films from a vast array of genres. Do these movies hold up over time? Are they classics? Find out on Retro Movie Roundtable. Starring your hosts, Bryan Frye, Chad Robinson, Dustin Melbardis, Lizzie Haynes, and Russell Guest. Coming now to headphones in your ears.
Welcome all you lords, ladies, and knights of the Retro Movie Roundtable, where we watch movies and then talk about them. I'm your host, Dustin Melbardis, and joining me today is my good friend and co-host, Bryan Frye. How are you, man?
Good evening, folks. I'm doing great.
We are thick in our fantasy seasons. How are you doing with your football and basketball?
Basketball is going to be a draft tonight. Football, I'm going to call it better than average.
I think we're week 4 or 5. I've already renamed my team to the Infirmary because of how many injured players I have. It happens every year. Everybody.
No, I feel like this year, I'm not sure if anybody's untouched by this year. This year's been brutal.
But we're not alone tonight for the show. We've got our friend. This is his 3rd time on the show, so he's welcoming him back, coming to you from San Marculon 5, Texas. It is special guest Jake Pierce. Say hello.
Hey, y'all. Thanks for having me again.
Absolutely.
Jake, I know you watch sports when it's on, out and about, but do you even have a rooting interest? I've never even asked you.
I've been getting more and more into football recently.
Around here, it's all Cowboys.
I'm not a big Cowboys fan. I don't really have a team, but I'm excited for the Spurs this year, too.
Wembanyama.
Yeah, I heard his preseason game went really well.
We were worried that he'd have that Chet Holmgren too skinny, unable to do the things that he was sort of projected to do, but he's been looking sick.
Yeah, there's a lot of hype.
It's funny you all bring that up because I was kind of fantasizing at one point about drafting Wembanyama and Chet and then maybe like Collins and just calling it Matchstick Men.
The Matchstick Men, yeah. The two talls, the tall trees. That'd be pretty good.
Like if I could get Durant in there too, like just a bunch of guys that look like, a hard shove would break all their bones.
Definitely playing the injury risk there. People breaking down because of their thin limbs. Well, this is not a fantasy podcast. This is not a sports podcast, a movie podcast. And we're going to start with a couple of warm-up questions. Jake, this is for you. Who's an actor who, when they transformed their acting career, really took you by surprise?
The easy answer for me is Matthew McConaughey. Going from kind of the shirtless romantic interest in rom-coms to Russ Cole from right, like that's an incredible. I mean, all of the stuff he's been in recently has been really good, right? Dallas Buyers Club. What else am I thinking of? All those great Lincoln commercials.
The Lincoln commercials, yeah.
That's why I drive a Lincoln.
Well, and we are in Texas here, so there's almost a church of McConaughey. People really hang on his words the same way that they hung on to Bush's words. He's kind of a hero here. What about you, Bryan? Who's an actor that transformed their acting career and took you by surprise?
No bullshit. I had Matthew McConaughey as mine too.
Hey,
no, truly, he's not wrong. It's one of those guys that I rolled my eyes at a lot. Like everything I ever saw him in was a date movie with my wife, and I was just like, this guy. And True Detective season 1 walked into my life, and I was like,
this guy's got some chops.
What?
Yeah.
What? And I've basically been, worshiping at the cross of Matthew McConaughey since then, because I'm like, dude, if this guy's in a movie that isn't, stapled as such, there's a movie he did, I think it was called Mud or something. I mean, it was like graphic.
Yeah.
It was gritty. And I was like, this dude's just throwing haymakers right now. I love it.
Well, I love the performances. I don't love some of the social aspect. I think he was in an interview where he said that they asked who his role model was, and he said, well, my role model's me 10 years from now. I'm just like, get out of here with that shit. That's not really my thing.
It's always best if you don't listen to them talk.
Yeah.
Like, just watch their performances. It's a Tom Cruise thing. Like, you can't. I learned this from Tom Cruise. Don't listen to the real them ever.
Right.
Just watch what they're doing on film and be like, man, I love your acting.
Yeah, it's a lot easier for us just to focus on the product. For me, and this, I don't know of any off the field issues with him, but it's Steve Carell. And I thought the easiest choices would be comedians who then go on to do dramatic roles. But I would say that some of Steve Carell's darker, more hard-hitting, painful movies, I think of Dan in Real Life first, or I think of things where he's not slapsticky. It's not like he was ever fully slapsticky, but Steve Carell.
The Morning Show.
You
watched The Morning Show?
That's with Aniston and, is it Witherspoon?
Reese Witherspoon.
Yeah.
It's fantastic. He's fantastic.
Well, and I didn't see the movie. This was something that was on my list that I missed. Was doesn't he play a wrestling coach in one of those?
Foxcatcher.
Oh, Foxcatcher.
DuPont. He's not playing the wrestling coach. He's like one of the DuPont billionaires. No, it's wrestling.
Oh, okay.
Oh, it is
he's
wrestling?
not a wrestling coach per se. He's just like interested in the sport. And it's two famous brother wrestlers from the United States. I haven't seen the movie though.
Yeah,
heard a lot about it.
I haven't either. I actually thought it was about track.
Yeah, it's something that now that we know that he's got that range, it's kind of cool to lean into that, I think. All right, so second question here, Jake. What's the last movie you saw?
Ooh, Redline. It's a anime racing movie. Think Speed Runner?
Speed Racer?
Speed Racer, yes. But modernized. And it's just a movie. It's fun.
Okay, fun movie. We like that.
Very campy. Lots of action.
I actually may be watching an anime sometime soon. I think it's called, and I don't normally aim towards animes, but we've got something coming out called The First Slam Dunk. Have you heard about this? The anime movie. But it's something where I don't think I've seen anime sports ever. So I'm hoping that it's
anime does sports well.
But I wouldn't know, so I'm diving in.
Kind of over-exaggerates stuff, makes it cooler. It's fun.
Yeah, that sounds good. What's the last movie you saw, Bryan?
Yeah, I did a big European vacation, so I had several flights and consumed several movies over the course of all of it. But I watched the new Indiana Jones movie.
What'd you think?
And
I was trying to read how he said it.
Yeah.
It's better than Crystal Skull.
Okay. Yeah. All right. So 99% of movies.
It's off the ground.
Okay.
Yeah.
The best movie watching experience I ever had on a plane was Moneyball.
Ooh, that's just
yeah.
Oh, I've got to. That's a good question. Best movie I got to watch on a plane. Gosh.
Let's
right,
bank that.
Yeah. You'll have to table that.
We'll give it to Russ later. Well, we aren't talking about airplane movies today. Well, not at least specifically some airplanes, I guess. Bryan, what movie are we covering tonight?
We are doing 1986's Transformers: The Movie.
The movie, that's right, from 86, really deep in its heyday, starring Eric Idle, Judd Nelson, Leonard Nimoy, Robert Stack, Lionel Stander, and Orson Welles in his final film performance.
Yeah. He died 5 days after doing the voice work.
Wild, yeah. So this had a $5 to $6 million budget, and it grossed $5.8 million. So it got about what it was spent. It placed 99th in the box office that year, which was just behind 98. That would be Highlander. And we've actually covered that on the show back in the show's infancy, second year. And just ahead of The Hitcher, which is a movie I've never heard of. Number one movie that year, well, we've heard about this one, Top Gun. We've actually just recently done an episode on that. IMDb gives Transformers: the movie 7.2. With Rotten Tomatoes, the critics give it 62%, but the audience really redeems this with an 88%, pretty high. Not winning any awards, and not really any distinctions within the AFI. Now, this is Jake's third time on the show, and this is a real patriotic time. This is our Veterans Day episode, so we decided instead of hitting the soldier movies, the war movies, we're going to go with Perpetual War.
Animated soldier war movie?
Animated soldier war movie set in the distant future of 2005. And so we gave Jake carte blanche to just the rare blank check. Instead of giving us a short list, we said, what movie do you want to do? And so for Veterans Day, appropriate that we did Transformers the movie. So Jake, tell us a little bit about your upbringing with this movie.
Okay, so full disclosure, Dustin gave me the opportunity to pick a movie, and this is unironically my favorite movie, and for a lot of different reasons. It hit me when I was like 6 or 7, and at the time I grew up in like a pretty, conservative household where I wasn't even allowed to watch like Harry Potter and stuff. I was watching VHS recordings of G.I. Joe, Transformers, Gilligan's Island, Andy Griffith Show, and then I was also allowed to watch war movies like The Longest Day, Tora, The Sands of Iwo Jima. And
Dirty Dozen, that's where we...
Dirty Dozen, right? Yeah. So I loved cartoons as a kid, as every kid does, but I was also watching these war movies, and I was always disappointed in children's cartoons where they just kind of fire laser blasters but never hit each other, and nothing ever happens. And then this movie was shown to me by my uncle, and I was born in 92, so this movie predates me by 6 years, but I was already consuming old media because I didn't have cable growing up. It was just what our grandparents recorded and sent to us in VHS tapes. And I loved it. I love so much about this movie. I love that it's a cult classic. I love that initially people hated it, that children were going home and crying and locking themselves in their room for 2 weeks. Also, it just hits a lot of my interests. Sci-fi, big robots, retro synthy wave music, hair metal music. I was introduced to this movie by my uncle. I watched it with my brothers. I was blown away. I love that there were consequences in a kid's show. Because I loved, like I said, I loved all those things, but there were never any consequences, so it was hard to buy into. This movie, it helped me buy into.
It sounds like it was genre shifting. It's like,
I didn't know they could do that.
You could have this. You could have it both. It's not just you get knocked down and fade to black, credits roll, we're going to come back and fight again next week, as TV shows kind of have to do, or at least in several senses. But yeah, there are clearly stakes attached to this movie. And it's interesting to think about that as a child, you recognized what I'm watching is different.
Yeah.
And different is not scared, go lock yourself in a bathroom for 2 weeks, but I really like this.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But it's also that context that, so I don't know if I should get into this now, but you understand that the context of the movie was to sell more toys.
Yes.
So Hasbro's executives or producers came down to the writer and said, we're killing
Cybertron.
Yeah.
Who the writer, what's his name? Ron Friedland, I think, is the writer of the screenplay and of the TV show. He had designed these characters to be like Optimus Prime was supposed to be a father figure. It was supposed to fill that role for children, and then
Cybertron.
Yeah. This is very clearly when it comes to like creative decisions, it's something that the person who is in the realm of know your audience is now being given a directive and will know just how explosive that's going to be.
Yeah, and I think this is very rarely do executives or producers ever lend anything useful to the story, the quality of story that's getting produced. But I think this is one of the very few examples where a producer's decision or instruction kind of made it better. For once.
Catapulted it into something that was maybe not foreseen.
Yeah.
Bryan, did you have anything similar to what we just heard from Jake as far as your early experience with this or your introduction to this movie?
What did you think? What did you think when it was suggested to you?
I thought good. My initial thing was good. I was like, yes, Transformers movie. Absolutely.
Had you heard of this movie at all?
Oh yeah, no,
Okay.
I've 100% seen this before, but it was years and years ago, and the critical eye that I turn on movies now for podcast is not always kind to films that have some shenaniganry attached.
Sure.
And there's some BS to this movie, and I was watching it, and it's just one of those things where it's like I'm the dude with a club, like, why is this happening? And rewatching it, I was like, okay, there's some stuff that absolutely needed to happen. It needed to happen in the show. It needed to happen deep, earlier in the series, because why wouldn't you kill someone like immediately?
Yeah,
like be shot in the face in like episode 2 of the show. And so, do you want to immediately? No, but he's like the martyr of the series.
Yeah.
I feel like even with the cartoon, obviously they're not looking to kill any main characters. So you got to take that out. Like, even through the history of Transformers, losing characters is just not something done. Now you take this movie and you're like, okay, you're willing to do that. Now I remember being like, all right, that's awesome. You're willing to do this. Let's really, take something from that, and that's an awesome thing. So I was like, kudos. But then there's this ragtag, let's desperately cling to this. The right things have to trickle down and happen in the right way. And there's got to be an all-powerful amulet of protection that is the only hope for the Autobots. We have Star Wars, where it's constantly the little guy versus the big guy. And I think my biggest problem with Transformers as a whole thing is, here you have the Autobots, and they're supposed to be the good guys, and they're fighting against the bad guys, and the bad guys are clearly the bad guys. But you choose what you imprint on to transform. Really? You're going to go with Minivan Champ? Oh, you're going to be a bug? This guy is a fighter plane. This guy is a tank. Like, outside of Megatron, who we can all admit that transforming into a gun to start, I guess there's a little comeuppance there. But by and large, like, the Autobots are trash. And I'm just like, the whole time I'm sitting there like, can't you all be like an Osprey or something? Like, maybe a support vehicle for the military that's a little bit cooler than a
could we have
VW
one guy transform
bug?
into the General Lee?
I just like it.
Well, Springer, the green Autobot, transforms into a helicopter and a car.
It's cool.
I feel like there's a lot of I'm sure there's a psychological term for this, but like, if I were a psychologist sitting down with the Autobots, I'd be like, guys, don't pigeonhole yourselves. You guys are putting yourself in a matrix, and you can be whatever you want. All you have to do is scan, go. And I know that maybe it's whatever you landed next to in the first place, but visit an army base, be an F-22, stop it.
Well, Bryan,
it's defeatist.
I encourage you to go back and listen to the theme song. They are robots in disguise. Okay. Part of it is a disguise. Minivan, not drawing a whole lot of attention.
That's true.
Kind of proved the point, right?
Tape cassette player.
Yeah, a tape cassette player.
That makes sense.
That's fair. But if you're going to be persistently, every Saturday at 11 o'clock, attacked by the evil forces of the Decepticons, maybe discretion isn't the better point of valor here, and you need a big gun.
There's something that stood out to me in this movie, and I'll get to my expectations here. Is I had never seen this before, but I felt like I had, considering how much Jake has talked to me about it, and I like knowing that this movie tie-in to a TV show based on toys had existed, but it was something that I was going to be content having never watched. But we had our chance to watch it, and I had my chance to put any attention towards Transformers at all. And that's the interesting thing. All of our Michael Bay Transformers movies, I think starting in 2007, and all of our new ones, completely uninteresting to me. Yeah. I don't want to watch them. Yeah. I understand the scale of them. I understand forever giant fighting robots have been cool to me.
Michael Bay, explosions,
and there are other things like other TV shows like Gundam Wing, or we talk about Mech Assault or Mech Warrior, or some of the Bandai stuff. We talk about Pacific Rim with Guillermo del Toro, like fighting robots. Sign me up every single time. But Transformers was not a show that was a part of my childhood, really. And when I took a step back, I thought to myself, as a toy, for me as a boy, Legos were number one. But a car or an Apache helicopter or a tank or a train, a Japanese bullet train that changed into a robot, and you can still see like the paint of what it was before. Yeah. I gotta say, the semi-truck of Optimus Prime never stood out like as cool.
What about the RV?
Right, the RV wasn't great. Yeah, the Winnebago, the Sprinter van. I don't know. Some of this stuff just wasn't really, as far as showing it on a TV show, wasn't that exciting. But anything that transforms is good. Even today, I'm like, oh, that's kind of fun. I'd love to have a little transformer on my desk, something that I can just fiddle around with. So the toy aspect of it makes a lot of sense. Then you look at the TV show, and as part of their combat with one another, the Autobots and the Decepticons, it's almost like the killing blow, not the killing blow, the powerful move is, all right, I've got him on his back foot. Now I'm going to transform back into a car and run him over. That is shown to us a lot, and they got to make sense of it somehow. But as far as coming into this, I didn't grow up with this show, and I do know that it fits in between the second and third seasons. But coming into this, I really didn't know what to expect, except for the sort of giant, unbeatable type of entity.
Sure.
Which is something that's presented in a lot of movies. From your time as a kid to now, you said it is your favorite movie.
Yeah.
Has anything changed with your experience of this?
If anything, just being the natural contrarian I am, the more and more obscure this movie becomes, the more and more I kind of love that I love it and get to tell people about it.
I have to say, that sentiment is something that I think Bryan will really sort of connect with, is that there are certain things that are good, and there are certain things that are campy and fine and you like. And then, Bryan, I think your term would be like, and then there are certain things that are mine.
Yeah.
Right?
Yes. 100%.
And this would totally fall into that category.
This is mine for sure.
Yeah.
And I get defensive about it too. I'm like, don't attack the lore of Transformers. Come on, they're alien robots that transform into things. Don't look into it too deep.
No, I
valid
completely agree. I completely agree, and I feel like that's where the conflict in me comes from, because I do love Transformers. Like I was a big, I even like Beast Machines, or Beast Wars. Like I followed Transformers for a really long time, and this movie never, like, the
Galvatron,
all of that was great, but when you're a kid and you're rooting for the good guys, because I feel like recently there's been a bigger push where kids root for bad guys. Like my daughter constantly asks, "Who's the bad guy?" Like, But I mean, growing up, it was good guys versus bad guys. Like I was always good guys. That was G.I. Joe, whatever. Thundercats, Silverhawks, good guys. So it just got to the point where I'm like, okay, why are the good guys
made lamer by their choices?
Like, yeah, like why? Like, all right, you can still be the good guy and carry a large stick. Like, this is nuts. You're making bad choices. Like, like you want to talk about the matrix of leadership? The matrix of leadership is telling you, hey, instead of being an Aston Martin, you should be a Black Hawk helicopter. Stop it. Hey, you're in a war, an intergalactic war with your arch rivals over your home planet, and
for
you're
centuries.
trying to protect these people. Bumblebee, how are you going to protect your people and humans? I'm going to be a Mustang. No, Bumblebee.
At the end of the day, they all transform into humanoids with laser guns. So it's like, I think that's primarily the combat role that they assume.
Yeah. Well, I guess, and then another thing we
like I said, robots in disguise.
Is that at the end of the long day, it's supposed to be until the day that we are all one and unified. I think that before we've even hit our ad break, we've started really jumping into the breaking down the lore and the purpose of this. And I want to give us a little tease before we come back, which is, I think when it comes to this movie, what it shows you is that I treated this movie as 5 episodes of a TV show in a row. And what this movie can do for you is show you that for the characters you know, or maybe you don't know so well, that you definitely do want to see them longer than 23 minutes with ad breaks. Like you want to see them for a long amount of time and get through a larger story, more than just one TV episode. But I am going to say that upon my first watch of this, which was just last night, the energy I'm coming in with this episode, I don't like this movie.
Dang it. No!
And I need to be convinced of its merits, and we're going to do that after the break. See you on the other side.
Welcome to the All 80s Movies Podcast.
I'm Bill.
And I'm Jason. And this is the podcast where we talk about the blockbusters, the flops, and everything in between from one of the freshest decades for movies, the 1980s. So whether you're a brain, a jock, a valley girl, or a Jedi, we've got some 80s classics for you.
Do these movies stand the test of time? Are we discovering something new? Is there an 80s movie we're finally watching for the first time?
Join us each week as we dive into the cinematic nostalgia that inspired and influenced a generation. From the hits to the cult classics, we'll discuss our earliest memories, favorite scenes, fun facts, and our not-so-favorite movie moments, too.
It's the All 80s Movies Podcast, now available on all major streaming platforms. Please subscribe and happy listening.
And we are back. And this is the time that we are going to give more information about this movie, more so than we already have. It's time for Bryan to give us a plot summary. Take it away.
Okay, the Autobots need Energon to retake their home planet of Cybertron from the clutches of the evil Decepticons. They dispatch a ship to their base on Earth to retrieve more. However, their plans are overheard and the ship is intercepted. Using the ship as a Trojan horse, the Decepticons fly to Earth and sneak attack the Autobot base, causing heavy damage. The Autobots are able to get a message out to Optimus Prime, leader of the Autobots, who arrives to turn the tide. He is mortally wounded by Megatron and passes the Matrix of leadership to Ultra Magnus. The Matrix is supposed to be so powerful in the right hands that a world-consuming ultimate transformer known as Unicron will stop at nothing to have it destroyed. After some very typical Starscream shenanigans, for those who have watched Transformers, a still functional Megatron is tossed out an airlock with some damaged compatriots and scooped up by Unicron and empowered as slaves to find the Matrix and destroy it. Megatron kills Starscream, this seriously needed to happen years ago, and focused the Decepticon power toward the Autobots' remnant, and specifically Ultra Magnus, the new wielder of the Matrix. The Autobots flee to a garbage planet filled with dangers, having taken many casualties, and after Ultra Magnus falls, the Matrix is then taken by Megatron, who is finally defeated by Rodimus, who takes the Matrix and saves the day in a very clipped ending.
Things escalate pretty quickly, is maybe the simplest way of putting this.
I feel like there was a fast forward button hit after the universal greeting the second time.
Ba wheat grana wheat mini bon?
And he knows it
dude,
off the top of his
they
head.
hit a button after the second time they use it and its success. There is like 5 minutes of and we win, and you're like, wait, what?
Yeah, there are a lot of cuts. There are almost cuts in it like there were supposed to be commercials at one point. And there's a lot of time jumps. But it's action, 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 action. The whole 90 minutes. Like,
Yes.
it does not let up. And it could use a little bit more maybe exposition, explain why they're, shaped like a minivan or whatever. and like let things develop a little bit more. But yeah, the whole straight action.
The other takeaway I took from this was, man, Thor Ragnarok just raked this movie for ideas.
Well, and this is also a Marvel product.
A tie-in for sure. It's Hasbro first, but
it was
they
a Hasbro's
did get
product, but Marvel did the strips.
It was the toys, the TV show, and then the comic book tie-ins. And I think the comic book tie-ins happen in either the end of Generation 1 or Generation 2. But essentially, the world couldn't get enough of these things. Mm-hmm. And I think I generally agree. Let's think about our cast here. We've got a whole lot of robots in disguise. We've got our good guys and we've got our bad guys. Mm-hmm. Jake, do you think you need to understand the civil war between the Autobots and the Decepticons? Or is it just good enough for our audiences, for our kid audiences of the 80s and their parents that took them to go see it, that these guys are always at war and we're going to have some battles, some episodic style like crash land on the junk planet, deal with a robo squid or a robo nautilus, whatever it is, the robo sharks. All of this stuff, it just seems like I don't have to really know or understand. I just am given the two sides and we're here to watch them fight.
They make it pretty, clear. All the bad guys have red eyes. All the good guys have blue eyes, right?
Didn't even notice.
There's stuff like that. It does help to know the context. It makes the deaths in all of this like way more impactful. Do you have to? No. It definitely does mean more. Like I said, this movie was a vehicle to sell more toys.
Yes.
And they're making the movie for people who already own those toys, who have watched the first two seasons in 84 and 85, fell in love with the characters, were excited about the movie, and then were terrorized by this movie. But it was designed for people who are already watching the show. Yeah. So maybe there is more of a disconnect that I don't get because I had already been watching the show before I saw the movie.
Yeah.
But it's definitely designed, like I said.
It is hard to kind of view it from a lens of not knowing who these guys are once you already know.
Yeah.
I think Transformers it's so big, and this is a number I'm pulling from a website I read yesterday, but as of 2011, this franchise has made $25 billion since 1982. Mm-hmm. It makes it like the number 11 or the number 12 highest grossing media franchises in history. And so I think I've said it before with Darth Vader. Darth Vader is bigger than the Star Wars movies, and especially bigger than A New Hope, which is that it's likely that if you've never seen a Star Wars movie, you at least know who Darth Vader is. You could say the same thing about Yoda or something like that.
Sure.
But the idea is this was so huge. Bryan, in that same realm, we come in and the bad guys have already won. That seemed a little surprising to me for the backdrop of this movie is that, yes, Cybertron is Decepticon ruled. Did that change your atmosphere for this movie? Did it seem like things were bad, or did it just seem like this is the backdrop for another episode?
I think one of the most broken things about Transformers is that they can't put themselves together. And I think that the way I said that is poignant toward the whole Transformers piece. They've done different things with every different series. The movie just rolls in and says, we're going to do the movie and we're going to do it this way. There's no continuity whatsoever to any of this. In fact, it's also interesting that it finished behind Highlander, which is another series that can't put itself together quite right. So, no, it wasn't surprising that they chose to do this swing. In fact, I played a couple of the Transformers video games where the Decepticons always had Cybertron. So, none of that was super surprising to me. It just, this David and Goliath thing is almost too much at times. Like, sometimes there is just a civil war and a fair fight.
I love that.
And it's weird to me that especially in this film, like, do you notice how Decepticons don't miss just free sail killing Autobots like it's their job?
Yeah.
They're assailing a fortress that once, they get spotted ahead of time. They didn't get the sneak attack. They're assailing this fortress, and this fortress has got just batteries of guns and stuff, and they're like, we're all fine. We're off up. Look at us killing all these Autobots. And I'm just like, okay, you're taking me out of this, because I'm like, this is crap.
Hot Rod does notice right away. Right away.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Those are Decepticons.
Yeah.
And here's the thing. Okay, all these Decepticons have already gone back to Cybertron. They're running Cybertron. They're still BA fighter planes and crap. And here you have the Autobots. They're just like, oh, I am cursed to walk the universe as a
Astro train
minivan. Stop it.
Okay.
It's wrong. It's wrong.
Hold on.
Oh my God.
I'm such a homer for this movie, though. Listen, we gotta move past the problems with the lore. I understand that the scale is messed up sometimes too. Unicron's the size of a planet. Sometimes he's the size of a moon. It's like there are things that change. It's animated by like 1,000 different people over the course of a year. Sure, they got a picture of it, right? There's also like, so it feels like, what is this, a war between 5 dudes? Sometimes it's just like 5 guys versus 5 guys. That's going to happen.
It's a burger joint war.
I want y'all to look past the shortcomings of this movie, its time frame, and maybe some continuity errors, but they're trying to keep kids in seats and sell more toys. It has some of the most beautiful like cells. Some of the animation, like, I love to this day. That big, the Autobot city transforming into a garrison just like covered with guns takes me back to the day where I would turn a stool upside down and pretending it was an anti-aircraft gun on the side of an aircraft carrier. Right?
Yes.
Like, and yet all of the defenders, the actual sentient people, like the base can turn into whatever it wants to. Absolute bastion.
Stop it,
and
Ryan.
I'm a car.
Stop it.
And I'm a car.
And I'm a
car.
Yeah,
He's a robot in disguise.
Now, here's...
What? You're not disguising your base? Your base is a freaking...
playground thinking, which is... I'm going to ask this question to Jake, and I'm asking this earnestly. Yes. Who's cooler, Autobots or Decepticons?
Decepticons.
I agree, right? Yeah. So we briefly mentioned that, you kind of root for the good guys, but the Decepticons are cooler.
You root for the Autobots because they get massacred,
and they do,
and violently. This maybe does't come across because we're adults and we're going back to watch this movie. But there are Autobots being melted in vats of acid.
Yeah.
Where it's almost like their skin is falling off.
They're screaming in agony.
Billowing.
Yes.
It's the inside of Unicron is supposed to represent Dante's Inferno with different layers of hell. There's actually so much symbolism in this movie that I could get into. I don't know if now's the right time to do it, but I could go off.
Well,
there's such great stuff.
Inside of Unicron is, and I would say...
an acid trip.
I wasn't looking to get like the feelings or the emotions as if I was a child.
Yeah.
I was looking at this movie this time to be like, how do I give this a critical analysis, but also use the good parts of nostalgia to be like, this is cool. And some of it's music, and some of it's animation.
Yeah.
The Unicron transformation,
the music at the end,
incredible. But I would say that the inside of Unicron, when you've got the kind of, it's not a conveyor belt, you've got the
hanging,
the claw game that's going along the track. That was actually scary.
Yeah.
Because you have, these aren't just Autobots, these are other like robot citizens in the world just being melted down.
Mm-hmm.
That was a smart decision to show like, this is for real.
Yeah.
And let's talk about the for real. Bryan, Unicron. when you introduce a planet-eating, larger than a planet-sized thing, and scale is a little weird in this movie, but doesn't that give you something that's like, wow, the stakes of this is way more than any TV show could ever give you?
Sure. And I actually don't have any umbrage against like the Unicron character as I am the big bad. Mm-hmm. Like the problem with Megatron was, and really the Decepticons as a whole, is faulty leadership. Like you look at the top of the Decepticon leadership and say, man, I'm rooting for the good guys, but if I shoot you in the head and I shoot him in the head, I could do a way better job at, like, I would have ruled the galaxy by now. Like, seriously, Megatron and Starscream are two of the most inept leaders in the history of evil leadership.
Is that why it's fun for us to have them be the leaders of the objectively cooler side? Is that they have idiots running it, and that's why this Civil War hasn't. It's
the only reason it keeps going.
Yeah,
hands down. It's the only reason. Like this wouldn't even be a fair fight. And the thing is, they keep it real in terms of numbers. So you've got 7 or 8 Decepticons in any given time fighting 7 or 8 Autobots. It's not like this onslaught of numbers where you've got 450 Decepticons against 20 Autobots.
The problem is they're fighting in the backdrop of a city or a planet. So it's 10 guys fighting over Cybertron, and you're like, well, this doesn't really make a whole lot of sense. You know what I'm saying?
One of my favorite nonsensical parts of this movie is where I think it was 5. It might have been 6. 6 Decepticons board that craft leaving for Earth.
Yeah. And just murder everybody immediately.
Well, no. And then they get spotted. Uh-huh. They shoot it down, and 5 to 6 Decepticons descend. The base closes up on itself and goes into defense mode, and all of a sudden there's 45 Decepticons.
Yeah.
Literally just exponentially more. They just spawn out of nowhere, and you're sitting there like,
it's a vibe. It's a vibe. Well, maybe this movie doesn't stand up well to critical review.
It's okay.
But here's the thing. I know I've tossed a lot of shade on this, but I mean, there's still the piece where you watch. You still want the good overcoming evil, unless you're Chad. Then you have Optimus Prime dying immediately, and you're like, "Wow, God, they're done." And let's be honest, Ultra Magnus does nothing.
Yeah,
at all.
Ultra Magnus does nothing.
Well, he also doesn't receive the Praetorian touch or Praetorian. So every pope has been touched by somebody. Yeah. St. Peter touched the first pope. That pope touched the next one. When the matrix of leadership falls out of Optimus Prime's hands, it's Hot Rod that picks it up first.
Right.
And it's supposed to be the symbol of that. So it's Magnus Prime is not that guy. He's a soldier.
You're right.
But he does nothing. Even as a normie, he did nothing.
I did feel as if especially in this movie,
these guys are cannon fodder.
You have a lot more shots of the Decepticons getting good hits on our Autobots. A lot more. It does seem as if they're always a little more prepared, or they've got the edge. And that is probably the case throughout the television show as well, which is that if you're going to have either of these two sides that are the attackers, it's going to be the Decepticons all the time. We are set up in the beginning of this movie with there's a plan to get from either of these 2 moon bases, from Optimus Prime and the rest of the Autobots, to get enough energon to be able to fuel/fund this sort of counterattack, which is what these 2 factions love to do more than anything, is just fight each other.
Specifically over energon.
Over energon, which they mined their planet to near depletion.
Sure.
Which is why they had to leave anyway. But I guess there was a question that kind of came up out of nowhere for me is, Are there Autobot and Decepticon just citizens?
Yeah.
Well, I mean, you have the people running like in every direction as Omicron is eating planets.
Yeah, and so it makes me think that there are
Listen,
restaurateurs and bakers. And
this is a budget thing. So initially, when they eat that planet, that like all the peace-loving scientist robots are on, they eat in the first scene, right?
Yeah, they have a lot of science liquid.
Yes, exactly. But there's tons of robots everywhere.
Mm-hmm.
And it's like, okay, they clearly had the budget and took the time to set up this context. Other times they don't. That's why you have moments where it just seems like it's five guys versus five guys, where the scale is off. Because they had like $6 million budget, but they only had a year to animate all.
And it takes a long time to animate this stuff for the TV show, just 23 minutes.
Sure. I think the average like Family Guy episode takes a year and a half to animate.
What?
Right. And that's with modern practices. And that's arguably a much simpler animation than what went into the Transformers movie. Granted, higher frames probably in Family Guy, but the level of detail in the Transformer movie is
much more
crazy.
Yeah.
Some of those back set pieces are amazing. In my opinion, the animation where you have the transmutation from Megatron into Galvatron with the sweeps and his other minions, I love that moment.
Cyclonus.
Yeah, Cyclonus, yeah. And then you have, the Autobot city transforming into defense mode with guns all over the place. You have the inside of Unicron. Unicron at the very end. You brought it up at the very beginning.
Yeah, the Junk Planet.
The Junk Planet was great, yes.
There's some things about this that I'm not being ironic when I say there's some gorgeous stuff here, especially if you have love for like early animation, or if you just if you are actively looking for something to say this is very good. Yeah, that it is.
Did anything ever remind you of Akira in the animation at all?
Yes, actually.
Yeah.
It's funny you took the words right out of my like memory bank.
I knew it.
The Unicron transformation felt as detailed and as smooth and fluid as the Tetsuo gigantic sort of ballooning up.
Yeah.
It felt all very detailed and controlled, which I thought was pretty cool. But
one's all angles and the other's all
mush.
Yeah, and chaos.
So we have our constant state of conflict between Autobots and Decepticons, and that's a given. If you have to go into this movie with any assumption is that, these guys don't like each other, they're at war. There are good guys and there are bad guys. But I think the TV show would have been centered around, like every episode would have had one or two of either faction that like they focused on, this is going to be a Soundwave story this episode. Yeah. And this episode is going to be an RC story, and something that matters to her.
Yeah.
Or this is going to be a Witwicky episode where it's something that matters to the humans. Yeah. And so I want to kind of bring it back down to sort of playground level again, which is, does anybody care about the humans here? Or we really care?
No, not really.
We really care about our robots. Like, if I'm 8-year-old Dustin, it's calling who's dibs on being Blitzwing. Or no, I'm dibs on being Bumblebee, not I want to be the guy in an exosuit.
Yeah, no, that's not the appeal here.
So there is a lot of, I guess we'll say, like rule of cool. We like these guys doing the things that they are called. Like we like them transforming.
Sure.
We like them battling with lasers. But then we have this, even though it's a constant state of big conflict, the most meaningful relationship in this movie, I think, has to be between Megatron and Optimus Prime. And the reason I say that, because we only have it for like 20 minutes, and it's because I'm not really sure about the other relationships between any other characters.
Yeah, and I mean, so you talked about RC, Hot Rod. Those characters are brand new. That's the first time they show up. I believe that whole crew of RC, Springer, the green helicopter, Cup, Hot Rod, maybe even Ultra Magnus. I may be wrong about that, though. I think this is their first appearance. I know it is for RC and Hot Rod.
Okay.
And that's just, like I said, them introducing new toys.
Yeah. Well, I bring up the relationship and I bring up the different characters because, Bryan, were there any of the other supporting cast? I think there may have been too many for any of them to get enough time to begin to matter to us.
I feel like they brought in a few fan favorites as basic pandering, in terms of the Dinobots and the Constructicons.
Yeah.
Like there was stuff like that. It's the token, like, well, we can't leave these guys out. Everybody liked them when we brought them in, so they have to be a part of this. And you notice how no one touches that. Like, it's not like Grimlock and a couple others get knocked off. No, it's, Ironhide gets shot without a second thought, but the Pterodactyl's fine.
I think Ironhide is, by definition, the most resilient Autobot in the history of Autobots, and he gets just shot in the head point.
He gets one line shot.
Yeah.
Just done.
Grimlock, not bozo.
Tell us about Grimlock, Bryan.
I feel like this is another one of the things that's a tough pill to swallow from this movie because, dude, the Dinobots are awesome. Everybody wants to see the Dinobots succeed. And correct me if I'm wrong, don't they form a giant Constructicon-ish thing too?
There are later iterations of many other Constructicons. I know this because I read it, not because I watched it. But I thought the
Dinobots also did
that seems
when
very
Constructicons were
Power
first
Rangers
introduced. The Dinobots were as the antithesis of them, and they also did a Mega Robot. Am I wrong on that?
It sounds like Megazord to me. That's what it seems like.
Well, either way, it's just one of those things where, as a part of this film, and how the Dinobots are used as a clearly untouchable piece of the Autobots' unsuperiority. It's like, we're going to wholesale massacre everybody that you watched in the TV show. We're going to introduce a few new people, few of which end up being more important than others. Dinobots are still golden. It took me out of it a bit because you're just left thinking, what?
Well, I think it's nice to know that our favorites are going to make it, but that doesn't mean they're going to be victorious.
Unless you're like Ironhide.
I think, well, I don't know if Ironhide's anybody's favorite. I think the thing is, the Devastator kind of handles the Dinobots pretty well in the attack on Autobot City, but we're still in that realm of they fight, they fall down, and they get back up for next episode. And then we get, and I want to talk to Jake about this specifically, about Optimus Prime gets shanked in the gut. Yep. He gets shot deceptively, and
he gets shanked twice.
He said it.
And he gets shanked twice, and the wound is enough to kill him. It's not even like it's not even some kind of massive heroic battle that might be shown in a Michael Bay movie. It's sort of like lingering injury. This is something that was very much different compared to the other stuff that you had seen as a kid, Jake. Mm-hmm. Now that we're in the proper body of our show, the death of Optimus Prime, was this something that was huge to you?
Yeah. Oh, yeah. I mean, you knew something was up right off the bat when a planet gets eaten and you see like the genocide of a species. Yeah. And then you immediately see Megatron and Starscream eradicate like 4 main characters in the first 10 minutes. And then it's like he gets stabbed twice. He gets the shrapnel and then like the electro sword. Then he gets shot.
We need more electro sword.
Yes, absolutely.
Again, Megatron, giant arm cannon, electro sword, Optimus Prime, piddly blaster. Like who? What?
Okay, You have to understand, his semi-truck is filled with armaments, Bryan, okay? He might have a tactical nuke back there, for all we know. He doesn't feel
Cybertron.
Like use it! Like
he runs over a whole lot of Decepticons.
He does.
Which that's why I was calling it kind of like the kill shot is punching and shooting isn't the way you defeat the enemy. It's by running them over with your car.
All I heard was he GTAs really well, but when it comes down to actual combat, you brought a laser pistol to a laser sword fight. I don't know how else to put it. Like it just,
he gets murked.
Megatron's like, yeah, I know my transformation sucks. That's why I've got a lightsaber. And you're like, no, wait, that's a what? That's another friend. This isn't even Gundam Wing. Stop it.
Yeah, I do. Yeah, I really liked his lightsaber though.
What's funny is Springer pulls out a metal sword later.
He does.
It's just more evidence of the Autobots kind of being sucky when it comes to combat.
They also have that big cannon that they have
load
to
a football into.
That they load and put a football into. And finally, we get to use this awesome gun that took 5 of us to move into position, and it doesn't hurt anybody. Nope. It's a cluster bomb of Nerf balls. Like, yeah,
yes.
I can't tell you how infuriating it is to watch a movie. It's like playing a video game where it's like, just so you know, it doesn't matter how much you level up your characters. The enemy is so overwhelmingly powerful because that's how we've decided to make them, that there's just no winning this. And that's how this movie portrayed itself. It doesn't matter. Like the Earth base looked so freaking cool. Mm-hmm. Like the guns, turrets. I was like, oh, these 6 guys on this Trojan horse spaceship that's been found out, they have no chance. Au contraire, they are completely untouchable. They're shooting completely inert ammunition that does nothing. Like, you can actually take an audience out of a movie by making it so one-sided that even as a child, I feel like you could call some BS on this.
Let's talk about how they eventually do somehow. I think the absolute, we can't call it the MacGuffin, but the thing that saves everyone is the universal greeting.
Sure. Or you could say the Matrix.
Or the Matrix.
Yeah.
I kind of put the Matrix as the MacGuffin.
Once they're inside, using the Matrix, which nobody else could figure out how to do, except for who ends up becoming Rodimus Prime, Hot Rod.
Well, it had to wait till all were one, when the Decepticons and the Autobots teamed up against Unicron.
Tell me about this team-up. I would have loved to see a little bit more of an actual team-up. As in, you've got your cooler Decepticons working with your Autobots to fight against. It seemed as if the fight was happening within, and we know that he was about to start munching on Cybertron. But I think this movie would have been very well served to give us just 5 to 7 minutes of Autobots and Decepticons on screen working together, fighting in the same direction, or shooting in the same direction. Now, yeah,
there's so much that got cut from this movie. This is a movie that's just been redlined by producers and whatnot. So whether that was Ron Friedland's original, he might have intended that, and that kind of does where it ends up where it kind of happens, where they're like, okay, we got to get rid of Unicron.
Yeah.
But they don't really build on it at that point.
We were in fast forward mode at that point.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Let's get to the end.
Well, in order to get to where the matrix of leadership matters, we did have to deal with the Junkions and find that cool screw-taped shaped ship. I called it an auger.
Yeah,
that auger
it certainly looks like one.
That might be my favorite
set piece,
unique thing from this movie is that ship, because of how they ended up driving it into Unicron's
that's how it lands. Oh yeah,
it's how it lands
through the eye as well.
Right. But, the inside of Unicron is just as dangerous and scary. He's got pincer tentacles inside his intestines.
Yeah. See, that's the thing about this movie is it's a sum of its parts for me. You could deconstruct this movie for its continuity, its all the things we've said, right? But there's so many little pieces that stand out to me that I love. The trash planet where they only speak in commercials.
That's a high
love
point.
that.
That's a high point. Bryan, do you like that style?
Well, and that's what they pull for Bumblebee in the later movies.
Yep.
Like that's a
Complete
nod,
rip-off.
Like direct homage.
And Weird Al Yankovic's Dare to Be Stupid on the junk planet where they only speak in commercials.
Right.
It's this funny little like nudge satire moment that kind of goes unrecognized that I find hilarious.
I think it's charming. I think it's like, this is a nod. This is great. Now, but I do want to speak about the music for a moment. The way I appreciate the music in this movie, because it doesn't let up. It is the take it to the top and you're gonna survive. It is that for 80 minutes. Does wear on me, but I think it only wears on me because of the sung lyrics.
Okay.
If I just had the backing track with the disco drums and the guitar riffs, I think I'm giving this movie a full another star.
Yeah.
I think it fits with the time and the energy. But hearing the vocal tracks, one of the vocal tracks was actually borrowed from a Stallone movie, Cobra, I think.
Yeah.
And hey,
is
some
that
of the tracks
Dare
are
or The Touch? Is that one of the Stan Bush?
yes.
So it's Vince DiCola did all the music, but a lot of it's Stan Bush, Spectre General, RNG.
You know the soundtrack
Yeah.
by heart. He's not looking at notes, ladies and gentlemen.
Yeah. I've also been listening to it in preparation for this episode.
Yeah.
I love the soundtrack.
I need a montage.
Yes, I think this is montage music. This is Danger Zone. If this was a bigger movie, I think some of these songs are household names. I think Stan Bush is a household name if this was a bigger movie. Dare, The Touch, Dare to Believe. It's so 80s inspirational
Dare to believe.
hair metal rock. It's fun, and then it's mixed with Vince DiCola's very like moody synth retro wave. Not retro at the time; it was just current at the time. But that synthy wave, like Unicron's, the Unicron song is like
that's really
great evil bad guy music. Everything about Unicron as an evil character, I love. Getting Orson Welles 5 days before he dies to voice a character that kind of pimp slaps Megatron, transmutes him into Galvatron, is eating planets. I love so much.
Yeah.
There's so many, every line Orson Welles has, I love, just because they actually had to do a lot of stuff. They had to speed up his voice lines by 8% and turn up the volume because he was 5 days from dying.
Well, let me jump in here real quick.
Yeah, sorry. I can gush.
Did they actually need any somebodies to do voices in this?
You needed, you needed all the main characters back for sure.
But they're not like their normal voice. It's their normal voice roboticized.
Leonard Nimoy, I could tell it was his voice. Judd Nelson, I was telling Jake before the record, I couldn't really recognize him.
I don't think you needed any of this to be like outside of being able to say, "Hey, we got Orson Welles to do this film." Like I didn't feel like the fact that it was this person behind the mic was necessary in a movie specifically made to disguise people's voices to sound like robots.
I think it's more important to have, and the name I have up here, Frank Welker, who does many of the main characters, he's more important as his voice. You think of the guy who does Geralt of Rivia's voice, or you think of the guy who does Master Chief's voice. I don't need a famous actor to be that. I need the voice to fit.
Sure.
And I think our Transformers, most of them have voices that really, really fit. I saw for RC, we have the voice Susan Blue, I think if I looked her up, she's done nothing else of note. But that she's been RC for like 4 or 5 seasons of this show, it's like, that's the voice. I think that was important. I would generally say that, like, you don't need to fill popular characters with famous actors. You need to fill them with better voice actors. And I think we got a good mix. And I don't think, like, having Leonard Nimoy took anything away. But yeah, it is going to be digitized. And it's going to sound like this is a robot Nimoy.
Well, but also I totally disagree. I think the gravitas that Orson Welles like brings to the planet-eating transformer is so perfect. The way he delivers his lines are so matter of fact. Your bargaining position is highly dubious, like, and nothing. Like, there's so many lines that, like, I think he delivered great.
I think he liked being in this movie too. Is that right?
He did. There's like one line that gets quoted. I think maybe his kids were into the show, but he kind of told somebody, he's like, "Yeah, I did this role on this planet eating blah 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 blah." I don't really know if he liked it or not, though. I mean, this is also Orson Welles when he's drunkenly. Have you seen those takes?
I've seen
of him doing the commercials.
Yeah,
and it's funny. He was actually looking for work at the time. He was excited to get the role because he was so desperate for work at the time. Because everybody knew he was close to dying, and everybody knew how incredibly unreliable he was because of the extent of his alcoholism.
Oh, yeah, which was true.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, I think we have covered with varying degrees of passion the things that we like and maybe don't like so much about this movie. I want to keep the conversation going in our superlative section. Are you guys ready?
Absolutely.
Yeah, I want to say one more thing.
Yeah.
Real quick. I absolutely love the Transformers franchise. And I can say this without really copping to any hubris whatsoever. I could have done a better job at piecing together a coherent Transformers lineage from start to finish than all of the different iterations did as a whole.
Are you saying that the introducing a 4-sided Justicar judge on the middle of a planet that was crash landed on, Quintesson, who was later revealed to be the forerunner of all Transformers? You're saying that didn't shine through to you in this movie?
I'm saying that sometimes you need one person to say, okay, start to finish, this is the timeline that we're going for. You've got to stop doing just this wrangly, maybe we should try this thing into your timeline. Like, you've got a great best-selling TV show, and then you kind of drop this in the middle of it. Then you kind of continue the TV show. Then you transform the TV show a little bit into something else. And, like, you could make a very compelling start-to-finish 25-plus year compelling TV show. But instead, you've got people just taking little poops.
Even with this, if we're going to say it's mismanaged, it's still a $25 billion product.
Yeah.
That really says.
But think of what it could have been. Like, if you did it badly and it was $25 million, think of, like, I think there could be a B in. Yeah, there could be a B in there.
No, it already is the B. Are you saying we could maybe get to 125 billion or maybe the trillion?
Yes. I mean, the
sentiment's it's good we're going into superlatives, though.
Yeah, it's the sentiment's the same. I get what you're saying.
Yeah.
Yes. And I'd say there was stuff here that, especially, we've fast forwarded ourselves when we're talking about the fast forwardness of this movie. I will say the children left the theaters with this movie saying, I didn't understand what happened, but I had so much fun. Mm-hmm. And I think that was probably the goal. I've said it before with another movie. Listeners, if you are sharp-eared, you might not like me making this reference, but it was a different movie called Valentine's Day where there's a very clear goal. The goal is to put all these people in this movie and make a lot of money. And while this movie didn't barely made back its budget, it did set off a catalyst for fandom in the future and for what kind of devotion people can have to this series. But let's keep talking about it with our superlatives. Jake, who's the MVP of Transformers: the movie?
Whichever executive at Hasbro decided that they want to kill off all these characters is my MVP.
Bold,
personally.
Risky, and it gave some stakes to this movie that I think were sorely needed. Yeah. Because as I think we may have said it, we may not have, but in the TV show up to this point, not a single character had died.
Yeah. And this is the only time I can ever think that somebody like that has had quality creative input or put a restriction that made something better, in my opinion.
That's pretty big. Yeah, that's pretty big. Bryan, who's your MVP?
Whoever got the green light to make the movie cover.
Oh, yeah, the movie cover's great.
If you go back to the movie cover,
it's a
Optimus
knockoff
Prime
of Star Wars.
Is not on the front cover of it.
Mm-hmm. It's Ultra Magnus.
Ultra Magnus is who really does nothing in the film.
It's a misdirect. I think Ultra Magnus
it is one of the most Decepticon covers that you could ever have for a movie about good guys, because everybody that you have on the cover is relatively pointless to the film. Outside of Unicron coming down from the top. Yeah. Like, yes, you have the people who basically live the longest in the film. The good guys that live the longest are on the front cover.
Yeah.
But yeah, no real there's no Megatron. You have Galvatron on the far right. You have no Optimus Prime. And you have Ultra Magnus, who is a placeholder for the next Prime.
Did you feel something when the matrix of leadership was used by Hot Rod? Did you feel something when you hear Optimus Prime's voice?
Yes. I get goosebumps watching that scene to this day.
I got goosebumps this time.
Yeah.
Even while I'm in the middle of being pretty critical.
You got the touch.
Dare.
And he's not on the cover. He's not on the cover of the movie.
Nope.
I'm going to echo what Jake said. The MVP's got to be Hasbro, the company. It's a toy company and a toy movie. And they got to create a movie that could be easily split into 5 episodes, which is what they did later on. They gave kids a new imagination crisis to play within. Is that, it used to be like, well, who's playing Megatron? Who's playing Galvatron? The idea of providing new spheres of imagination for the children. It had to be a rousing success. Lego's the master of it, but Transformers really did an incredible job. So I guess it pains me to say it, but good job to the corporation. Hey, Jake, who's your best supporting actor?
Leonard Nimoy. I think he did a great job voice acting Galvatron, making him sound like an authoritative bad guy.
He is cool.
He had a great performance.
And I think he is still cool, even in that subjugated state. Mm-hmm. Who's your best supporting, Bryan?
I mean, I'll go Wells or Nimoy on this, just from it's cool to be able to say A and B were in this movie.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Because, I always talk about how in my heart of hearts, what I would love to do, if I could get an acting role, is something along the lines of Gregg Grunberg, that is a J.J. Abrams favorite. He's Snap Wexley in the most recent Star Wars trilogy. He was in Alias. He was in the Star Trek movie that Abrams was part of. And it's like he's always like a very ancillary character, but that man gets paid by Comic-Con out the ear for the rest of his life.
Mm-hmm.
And it's one of those things where if you're the voice of RC in this movie, that's it. You're done. You get to show up to Comic-Con Houston. To Comic-Con,
San Diego, London.
Yeah, whatever. San Diego is usually more big time. I'm saying, like, you get to do the ancillary Comic-Cons and get paid a very reasonable salary for just being you.
Yeah.
The rest of your life. And that's it. That's it. Like, you look at guys like Malcolm Reynolds from Firefly, and you're like, dude, your show was canceled after like 8 episodes, and it was a great show. Please don't take this the wrong way. You are set. Do you understand? You're set for the rest of your life.
Yeah.
By playing one iconic character in a failed TV show, you're done. So when I look at stuff like this, and I start looking at like the lower cast ranks, I'm just like, look, most of you guys are dead now because they're like a lot of the voice acting in this were by elderly gentlemen. But if you were the dude who's 18 and just did the voice of additional generic Autobot number 2, and you show up to Comic-Con and be like, I was additional generic Autobot number 2 in Transformers the movie, we're going to give you $32,000 a year, and all you have to do is travel to these 9 cities in the U.S. every year and be like, I was in Transformers the movie.
Yeah,
sold. Thank you, sir.
Can't knock it. I got to say, Frank Welker, who is one of our big voices in this, in total has done over 800 film, TV, and video game credits as a voice actor. And his movies have grossed $17.4 billion, meaning that Frank Welker is the 3rd highest grossing actor of all time. Now that's really saying something about Transformers: the movie.
Kobe.
Yeah, so my best supporting is Eric Idle. I found it incredibly odd that he was first billed. It didn't make sense to me because he only shows up 45 minutes in the movie, and he plays a character with a pseudo-personality, which is the one who just repeats the TV ads. But damn it was extremely fun. And the other junkie ones do it too.
Yeah.
I think that's so fun. Good job, Eric Idle there. Just kind of being... if you would know the voice if you know his previous work, and even if you don't, he's got a distinct voice. And I kind of like that character's design too. It almost had a little samurai mask flair.
Sure, yeah. Guy Foxy.
Yeah. Hidden gem for this movie, Jake.
I'm going to double down on the animation. Seeing the transitions in the movie are some of my favorite. Seeing something turn into something else, seeing the schematics of the inside of Megatron before he turns into Galvatron. I just love that stuff.
I think there's something about some of those.
I don't know if that's a hidden gem though.
Well, if it's something that stands out to you, the thing that made sense to me was that gravity doesn't work quite how you might expect it in this movie.
Guys.
Gravity doesn't really work how you might expect it. Scale doesn't work the way that you might expect it. But then when I thought about it, the same issues exist with G.I. Joe and with X-Men 10 years later, is that doing epic battles in animation if you have a static camera, which is hard to say, is difficult to do. The anime studios do a better job of it. But you can't knock this movie because in reality, a lot of animation at the time couldn't handle the sheer size of a Unicron transforming on screen. You have to show all the different parts of it. But yeah, it's a cool option. What's your hidden gem, Bryan?
I went with I'm blank on his name now. Jack Angel. Jack Angel does the voice of a character called Astral Train.
Yeah.
Now, Astral Train is a special bullshit character that shows up just in time to save the Decepticons. You know what we really need right now? We need a locomotive that's also a spaceship.
Yeah, it is.
Astral Train.
Yeah, that train lane.
I think I had that toy growing up. It's like all it is the fins go up or the fins go down on the side. Like that was it. It's the worst Transformer.
Space train.
And he shows up just in time to save the Decepticons from failure. He holds a very specific part in this film because he's the one that gets Megatron chucked out the airlock to magically come across in the fathomless reaches of space. Magically be happed upon by Unicron.
We know that Unicron has perfect. He's got Omnivision because we see the TVs as the Autobots are pulling out the Matrix.
He's got some type of hidden mental.
He's got Omnivision
control beam.
Well, it's funny you bring that up because I've almost called him Omnicron a couple of times.
So. You have once. We're gonna mess these names up consistently.
Yeah. So I'm there with that piece. But yeah, I'm my hidden gem is gonna be Astral Train.
Astral Train. Yeah, get us out of here.
It's too heavy in space.
Yeah, it's too heavy in space.
There's so many of that. There's like sometimes they shoot their gun and it blows up a cliff. Sometimes they shoot their gun and it like bounces off like a pane of glass. There's so much inconsistency. That is not what this movie's about, guys.
There is something to say about our Decepticons here, which is that, especially among their leadership, is that they are deceptive to one another, and that's one of the things we know. Especially Starscream. I loved his like when he tosses Megatron out. Is there a possible hidden depth to this that? It wasn't Starscream who was looking to, like, essentially usurp and get rid of the dead weight, that the true brains behind it was Astro Train.
Astro Train?
No,
we're not giving you that much.
Starscream has been dreaming about chucking him out on an airlock for like a decade at that point.
I love it.
Yeah. Well, 20 years because this movie is a time skip 20 years from where the TV show in the future in 2005 Cybertron.
That's right. My hidden gem is character death. It's not really that hidden, but what's important is that the characters that die stay dead. I've mentioned this before, is that it is absolutely necessary that Spider-Man loses Uncle Ben and Gwen Stacy. And from what I read, the deaths in this movie, aside from Optimus Prime, the deaths in this movie stick. And that, for children, that could be pretty difficult. Just 10 years before, Sesame Street had one of their main human actors, Mr. Hooper, die in real life. And so the show had to come up with, well, where did Mr. Hooper go? And they had to explain to children that sometimes our older friends pass away. Mm-hmm. And in a cartoon animated show about war, consistent, never-ending war, that the Autobots and Decepticons that die in this movie, Starscream gets obliterated.
Disintegrated.
Yes. And it's like, all right, anyone else stepping up? Like, no, long live Galvatron.
Oh, it's literally one of the most necessary deaths in cartoon history.
Yeah.
If you've ever had one of those guys where I'm like, look, if you're going to stack the deck so much in the bad guy's favor, and you've got a guy as annoying, as condescending, and is constantly contradicting the bad guy leader as Starscream, like, these guys are villains. Like, Starscream should have been dead a long time ago. Like, almost immediately. Like, I disagree, bam! Episode 1. Transformers, more than meets the eye. Like, that's literally the lifespan Starscream should have had.
Villains start to die.
He's supposed to be the, like, Iago character.
Yeah.
He's supposed to be, like, the treacherous uncle. Like, so I said Optimus Prime was supposed to be the good father. Megatron is supposed to be the bad father. Starscream is supposed to be kind of the treacherous uncle that, like,
the wicked Uncle Ernie.
Yeah, but you shoot him in the face. Mm-hmm. Like, this is one of those, like, where willing suspension of disbelief only goes so far. Where, like, if you're the main bad and you're like, I've got this henchman who's a pain in my ass, and he's constant. Like, I know he would shoot me in the back of the head.
He's my second in command. all the time.
But he's not competent. Like, and first off, if I'm Megatron, first off, you have to realize that you yourself are not competent. And then you have your also equally, if not more incompetent second in command. At least have the cognizance to shoot him. Like, you got guys who, like, your intelligence officer is more intelligent than both of you. Like, when he tosses his hat into the ring and he's like, I think I should be, he's like, you don't really have a personality. I was like, yeah, but he knows more than all of you.
And he's got his
like,
little dudes.
Clearly more than all of you. Like, I don't know. It just, that was another thing where I'm like, you shoot this guy in the face.
They remind me of Space Ghost's villains that don't get along with one another. We got to move on. Who are you recasting in this movie? If you have to. We're not saying you would. If you had to recast in this movie, Jake, who were you replacing?
I don't know. I mean, is that like with a different voice actor or just change a character?
You could do either here, especially considering that that it's animated. Bryan, let's start with you and give Jake a chance to think of something.
I took real umbrage with Ironhide's death. I would just replace him with additional meaningless Autobot that gets shot, because they definitely have enough of this, ancillary character, unnamed whatever fighter. Don't kill
let's
Ironhide.
Have the police interceptor bot get shot.
Yeah, like, don't kill Ironhide. Stop that. Stop. Yeah. And if he dies nobly, killing, something important. Like,
right.
Don't just arbitrarily kill a guy with no importance whatsoever.
He allows the Dinobots to escape and get crushed.
Even Ultra Magnus had a better death than Ironhide, and I'm like, stop it.
Ultra Magnus was originally intended to be drawn and quartered.
I saw that.
You saw that? And then all of the Autobots that were like left were supposed to bonsai charge the Decepticons and get mowed down.
Wow.
Yeah, Jesus. They cut a lot of stuff.
I think I would have liked that. So my
additional bad ideas.
my recast is also a slight change. Cup, kind of the old codger that tells war stories.
I like him.
I mean, I like him. Okay, he has actual quality that has you like remind you of what he does. But instead of that, like telling war stories guy, I'd like him to be more of quote unquote ashamed of his past, like commando that does not want to relive war anymore, a la Rambo. And instead of being voiced by Lionel Stander, he's voiced by Sylvester Stallone. He's like the Vietnam vet who doesn't want to revisit the Cybertron wars, but gets brought back in. And, some Decepticon is giving him... And he's like, why are you pushing me? Why are you pushing me? And then you've got Rambo Bot shows up. So that's that's what I'm looking for. The bloody aftermath really pushes him over the edge.
Not only do I love that, but I'm thinking like Stephen Lang from Gettysburg and Avatar. He plays the Colonel in Avatar. Yeah. He plays Pickett in Gettysburg. Like, I 100% agree with you on your pick, and I understand why you went with Stallone. But I think what this movie lacks is actual personalization for your characters.
We've only got a couple. It's very low. We do have Scatman Carruthers as Jazz, I believe, and it's like, listen to he's only on screen for 30 seconds, but doesn't he sound cool? Like, that's it. That's all you get.
Like, give me some, like, I guess in a movie where you're just like mowing down people left and right, you're not really thinking about character development. But I think that's what it lacks, is you want to gravitate and be connected with a character because you understand their backstory and what they're coming, what they're bringing to the table. And this just like that's what makes a character death more meaningful, because you're like, that guy had seen stuff, man, and then he, this is how he died.
Groot has characterization with no
lines.
Whereas Hot Rod, the new Rodimus Prime, the only thing you know about him is that he catches fish with his fishing pole the size of a light pole. I don't know if he has much else of a personality.
No.
Yeah.
Listen,
he's got flashy paint.
This got great paint.
Yeah.
Right. If I had to recast or change something about him, he's not a Winnebago at the end. He turns into something else for sure.
Firebird.
Firebird. I mean, he starts out as a Firebird.
Oh yeah, he is a Firebird.
Well, listen, this isn't a character development movie. This is all about action and fun, killing off. There's not going to be a whole lot of character development going on.
Yeah,
it's a vibe.
I want a dump truck Autobot.
There's a dump truck Decepticon that
makes up part of it's part of Constructicon.
Oh, okay. Is it played by Nicki Minaj? Anyway, that's a miss. All right, what's your best shot of the movie, Jake?
The transmutation. Yeah, that scene
of Megatron
into Galvatron.
Yeah,
that's the one I always show people too. Mm-hmm. When I've cornered them at the party and I'm telling them about my favorite movie.
Have you seen Transformers movie?
This is how I know I'm too drunk, when I've like cornered like two guys who don't know me, and I'm explaining. I'm like blocking off the keg. Like, actually, no, it's a really good movie.
Optimus is dead at this point. Yeah, you forgot. Okay, what's your best shot, Bryan?
I think I really do enjoy Unicron's devouring of planets, especially when when it really gets into it. Like, he's got a real good grip on it at that point. I do think there's a little bit of continuity error on the ships that get away and the ships that don't get away. Mm-hmm. But yeah, I look, we've kind of toyed with the idea that this wasn't a Marvel thing. I'll have to look into that later, but I'm sitting there thinking about Galactus the whole time. And but yeah, it just that's like you wonder how many different robot or sentient robot species are out there. And one of the thought-provoking things that this movie on this rewatch specifically for the podcast brought to me is, so I'm to believe that all of these sentient planets have robotic sentient life.
There's more of them out there than they are humans. I would be happy.
Well, no. My thought is, humans create AI. We're just the next melting pot for another Cybertron, another robotic species. Once we're wiped out by the robots that we eventually create.
I don't know if I'm going to butcher the saying, but it's like we're the sex organs for the machines. We're eventually going to create the machines that eventually take over everything.
Yeah. We're just the organic fodder that is the next robot planet.
I'm going to go ahead and take some of my time that I would have used on Best Shot to say I'm very much. I would be way happier with Transformers if there were no human beings in it at all.
Yeah, same.
Agreed.
We don't need the Witwickies.
No.
Spike, Daniel. I think one of the critics said something like, "You only have one meaningful human in the movie," and he spends the whole movie crying about his dad.
Yeah.
So I don't need any
Beast Wars was amazing because they literally took it before. First off, it was one of the pioneering TV shows using CGI, and then they take it to a prehistoric time where they didn't have to bother with humans.
Yeah, we don't need to bother with them. That show was good too. But I'll make it very short. My best shot was Starscream disintegrating. God, it was sick.
Quite literally the best shot.
Yeah, a very good shot. Mm-hmm. What's your best scene itself, Jake?
Ooh, best scene is definitely the end. I like I said, I straight up do get goosebumps when I hear doo 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 doo. You got the touch, touch. And it's like the thing opens up. I just love that animation style too. This kind of cyberpunky, purpley blues, greens, and it opens up and it shines out.
Yeah,
I love that. And then he transforms. He turns into a bigger, bad Autobot. I love that.
Bryan, best scene.
So I kind of toiled over this because I don't feel like any one grab on this is really compelling in the way that I usually look at a best scene. But I do think that in terms of Transformers, if you take the series as your focal point, not just a movie, it's got to be the defeat of Megatron at the cost of Optimus Prime's life but
Yeah. Okay.
the loss of the fact that you don't actually Megatron doesn't die. So I feel like in terms of a scene where like you want that gladiatorial matchup between the two main characters that you've been used to and seeing forever, it didn't end the way that was palatable for me, but I do feel like it was absolutely iconic for the series.
I'm going to burn one of my best quotes, which is that later on in the movie, Galvatron is talking to Hot Rod, and there's something that I feel like the series has, but this movie didn't have it as much. You have to know that it's meaningful. Is he says to Hot Rod, "Puny Autobot, you lack even Prime's courage," which means that he respects him in some way. Mm-hmm. And when your two leaders of your armies respect each other in that way, and there is a climactic, I think their first big fight in the series was the end of the season, the first season. So it's something where like this is supposed to have a lot of weight, and it feels like it does in this movie. My best.
Can I bring up one thing? Yeah. Like, just I'll make this succinct. There's an inherent problem with 80s, 90s cartoons where they put too deep an emphasis on main good guy, main bad guy. I'll use X-Men 95 as a example where, you know, Professor X and Magneto are engaged in this die-hard struggle and everybody else around them by and large are fodder. In terms of what's, you know, if Professor X shows up, it's a trump card. If Magneto shows up, it's a trump card. Like it's this big deal. And one of the things that I've kind of touched on a couple times as we've talked about this is, you know, I get it. Optimus Prime is Optimus Prime, but you've got to give some credence to, like, if you're a freedom fighter, if you're trying to, you know, you're rebelling, you're trying to retake your planet, like you got to have some other stalwarts.
Yeah,
like you've got to have, you know, it's a team effort.
No, I feel you.
and I get it. It's Optimus Prime. Yeah. Hell yeah, Optimus Prime. But like, come on, man.
It really makes sense. The way that you just described it with other X-Men or the Brotherhood of Mutants being fodder is why do they so often show us in the movies Magneto and Professor X playing chess, and what do we know about that game? So that's an interesting thing about like cartoons of the time, is that I think this is a media franchise that's prime, no pun intended, that is like primed for all of your characters mattering more so than just their bottled episode where you go and deal with some mystery in their past. Like that makes a lot of sense.
I want to point out that if Optimus Prime and Megatron ever sat down to a game of chess, I 100% can see who wins. I mean, it's not even like a thing.
Yeah, Megatron.
Like you have, it's opportunism against bigger picture thinking. So, like that was what gave X-Men credence, was the fact that you had two intellectual people fighting against each other. This is a guy playing checkers versus a guy playing chess. Just one turns into an 18-wheeler and the other turns into a giant gun.
That should be the pull quote for our show. The best scene for me in this movie is when they use the universal greeting to turn the Autobots' certain dismemberment at the hands of the Junkions into a dance party. It's the best scene.
Not guilty.
No. That was the Quintessions.
The Quintessions.
Oh, no, I know. I'm just saying,
they
like...
use it on the Sharkicons, and they give him the piece of Energon, and then it's on them.
It was death by Magumbo. I tell you, it's just like... Not guilty.
Yeah, what a strange little detail we didn't talk about that much at all. All right. Now this is really just a character design thing for this episode, but best wardrobe or makeup moment for you.
I mean, Unicron's design's sick.
Is Unicron scarier as the Planet Eater or as the giant robot?
Planet Eater.
I think Planet.
For me.
I don't know, because the reveal at the end was so cool to me as a kid when he turned and he's got like the spine wings, sticking out the side, and he's got the horns. I think I actually will go with his like robot humanoid form, but it's close.
Yeah. What about you? What's your best wardrobe or makeup scene for an animated movie, Bryan?
I'm gonna tag in on this. I'm gonna go with Unicron Planet.
Okay.
Because the horns
Very cool.
that he's got going on remind me so much of frickin' Spawn. And I can't remember a more terrifying comic book reading as a kid than Spawn. Like, I shouldn't have read that. Like, when I picked up my first issue of Spawn,
that was 9.
I was not of an age where that was an appropriate thing for me to read.
Yeah.
And dude, it was totally that, the horns, the third one over the top, like that Unicron piece was like, oh, I've got some deep-seated issues that I've buried that freaks me out about.
I'm going to go a little lighter with this, which is to say when Galvatron is wearing the matrix of leadership around his chest, I really get like a Flavor Flav.
Like he's got a chain on.
He
boy.
looks good. It looks good on.
You afraid of it, son?
Yeah, boy. All right, change one thing, Jake.
Get rid of Wheelie.
Oh, no wheelie?
Yeah, that tiny little annoying...
Is he the guy talking like really quick?
Yeah, the tiny...
Wait, no, that's Blur.
No, there's Blur, but it's the little tiny orange car that shows up on the...
Junk.
It shows up on Junk, but first shows up on the Sharkicon planet with the Quintessence or whatever. And he guides the Dinobots to find Cup and Rod.
That's right.
I don't think he serves any purpose, and he just annoys me.
He's just a little
tiny little voice
guy. Yeah, that's all he was. What are you changing, Bryan?
I feel like the entire episode has been things I would have changed.
Well, yeah, okay.
No. Listen,
how about this?
I'm not trying to like toss a vat of acid on this movie,
because
I actually still love this movie. I would say that there are like 2 things you can change in this movie to make it a thoroughly non-complete indignation film. And some of that is a little parody in terms of the fighting. 2, if you're, actually assailing something greater than you don't just get to have your way with it. So there's just there's just a little bit of quid pro quo that could have gone better in terms of combat sequences in this to make it more believable and more realistic. Even if you're going to kill main characters, you got to make it like vibe like they're meaningful. And I feel like you lost a lot of meaning in characters in this film. So my change one thing, I think what it boils down to is if we're going to have deaths, make them meaningful deaths.
Yeah. No, I see what you're saying. For me, I think it's hard to change Unicron at all because his power is in his size and being able to eat. And it's actually pretty cool. Like in the first 5 minutes, you can hear him. It actually has like a little munching, like cereal
I
sound.
hate that.
You don't like that?
I know that specific moment where it's like, ouch.
No.
It's like very cartoony. It's done such a good job to set this wonderful stage, and then it's like,
you're
just
exactly
like, what is that?
Yeah. So the thing about Unicron at that size, I'd love if his transformation somehow like left the planet-eating part, like his planet-eating factory self behind, to where Unicron was a little bit more manageable to animate fighting, because I think he does just kind of get bored into and defeated from the inside at the end. And I'd mentioned earlier, I'd love to see Autobots and Decepticons team up, even if it's just 7-8 minutes on screen, to fight against something that realistically can be fought against and not fought within. I think that was a missed opportunity. But the size of Unicron didn't allow it unless you adjust how that transformation happens. Okay, let's finish out with our best quote. Jake.
Oh, come back to me.
Okay, he's going to think on his. Bryan, what's your best quote?
I've got better things to do tonight than die.
Okay, there you go. For me, I was planning on being a little bit more critical throughout the show. Instead, I had
but
a
then
lot of fun.
Bryan came in.
And I said I had a lot of fun talking about the things about this movie that were pretty good. And so I had loaded up my best quotes because a lot of the lines in this movie are good. So I'm going to break the rules and give you a bunch. From Galvatron, it's a pity you Autobots die so easily, or I might have a sense of satisfaction. Like, that's pretty cold. Then we got some early in the movie from some, it might be Ironhide, I'm not sure who it is, but when are we going to start busting Deceptichops? That's fun. That's fun. And then right afterwards, your days are numbered now, Decepticreeps. This is totally the campy style.
Let's burn rubber.
Yeah.
There was the door falls on the Quintessence.
Yes,
and it's
it
like,
does.
excuse me. Like, there's some, and then there's one line, Galvatron is like, your coronation Starscream, this is more like a bad comedy.
That's
and
right.
Then shoots him.
And then
like,
just shoots him, yeah. And then I guess I'll give you one final one, which is from one of Soundwave's little tape cassette friends.
Yeah.
Says, hey, nobody calls Soundwave unchrasmatic. Yeah, let's kick some tailgate. Like, all right, these guys are cool.
First we crack the shell, then we crack the nuts inside.
That's good. See, there's a reason I wanted to load up the best quote section, because some of this stuff is really exactly what you want.
And Optimus Prime has some pretty cool, like, laconic, like, quotes.
Yeah, Autobots transform and let's roll out.
Yeah,
that's
it's like
cool.
All for one, one for all, or, stuff like that.
Well, I mean, look, all of these characters, like Lionel from Thundercats, Optimus Prime, like, there's a reason when someone says engage, you think Star Trek, Jean-Luc Picard.
Yeah.
Okay. So, like you're here we go. Whatever we're doing.
Yeah.
Are iconic pieces.
Yeah, I think that's it was right after 9/11 when George Bush said, let's roll. I was thinking, he took that from Optimus.
Broncos country. Let's ride.
Well, you gave us some quotes. Did you think of another best one?
Oh,
there's plenty out there.
Best quote. I mean, some of the ones I said, your bargaining position is highly dubious. Yeah, stuff like that.
Proceed on your way to
oblivion. Yes, yeah.
All right, we hit some quotes. We did all of our superlatives. Well done, guys. We talked a lot about this movie, but it is time to rate this movie and choose whether we recommend it. Bryan, I'd like to start with you.
I give this a solid 3 stars. Look, I still have the nostalgia love. I think it's almost a disservice to this movie to go back as a 40-year-old and tear it apart, because I mean it's
a vibe. It's a vibe.
It's 80s cartoon.
There's some coked up producer telling Friedland
yeah,
what to do
man.
with the
I mean,
script, and I'm here for it.
We have come a long way. We can all admit we've come a long way with film. I think there's a realization. I think the 80s and 90s were a period of upheaval where, the status quo was being met, and then they were thinking, well, maybe we could do something different. And now we are in a point of better film in general. And it's not fair to go back and look at something like this movie and just, yes, we can point out all the things because that's what we do as a podcast, but it's still Transformers.
That's true. What a great attitude.
But it's still Transformers. So, I mean, what do you do then? So I think it's probably best, we didn't have a Gen Z person in on this, because they would have just been like,
Jake, I'm going to kick it over to you.
Yeah.
What do you rate Transformers: Cullen the movie?
5 stars.
5 stars.
5 stars.
I don't think there was
5-star
any doubt.
screams all the way.
Yeah, there we go.
I love this movie.
Yeah.
I will continue to recommend it to people.
Please, Megatron,
I will
don't kill
continue
me.
to corner people. If you didn't get the movie, then you're just a nerd, okay? Because it's a vibe, it's a bop, it's serving
Cybertron.
There
it's
you go.
great.
I still function. You sure about that? Well, I wanted to be the last one on it. There was a lot enjoyable about this movie. There was a lot that was not that enjoyable about this movie. Me and Russell talked a couple of weeks ago. He was telling me about the soundtrack. I almost wish he didn't, but I would have arrived at the same conclusion. It beats you up. It wears you down. I like that kind of music for 20 minutes. For 80 minutes, it knocked me down. The sort of episodic nature of the movie, the things that
There are arcs. There's 3 arcs.
There's some arcs here. There's stuff here
Acts.
where I believe Transformers are a 5-star toy.
Mm-hmm.
And I believe Transformers: Colon the movie is a 1.5 stars movie. But
It's the Transformers, the movie.
I'd recommend it.
Yeah?
Yeah, I think it's something people should watch. And it really shows you how far we come, sort of like what Bryan said, but also just that, like, there's still a lot of that fun. Not all nostalgia is good, but this counts among the good nostalgia.
Do you think this is one of those movies that's like kind of like watching The Wizard of Oz with the
Dark Side of the
movie? Like, maybe this is the kind of movie that you take a tab of acid to or something.
Maybe. Give me the Blade Runner soundtrack with this movie, and it's a 3-star movie.
Okay.
Bryan, we have to pick a movie for next time. Can you help me?
Yeah, let's do it.
All right, well, we are moving from the 80s to the 90s, and it's time to laugh. Here are 3 90s comedy movies for you. Option number 1, from 1991, What About Bob? A successful psychotherapist loses his mind after one of his most dependent patients, an obsessive-compulsive neurotic, tracks him down during his family vacation. Option number 2, from 1993, Mrs. Doubtfire. After a bitter divorce, an actor disguises himself as a female housekeeper to spend time with his children held in custody by his former wife. And option number 3, from 1994, a classic, Dumb and Dumber. After a woman leaves a briefcase at the airport terminal, a dumb limo driver and his dumber friend set out on a hilarious cross-country road trip to Aspen to return it. These are all great choices. Where are we going with, Bryan?
Oh, yeah, Samsonite.
Samsonite.
No, I'm going to go with What About Bob? 1991. That's a solid choice for this.
Introduced to me very late, but I believe it's one of the few movies that I own because I own it on a flash drive. It's one of my. I return to it quite frequently. Well, Bryan, thank you, and really special thanks to our third timer.
Thanks for having me, y'all.
Jake Pierce, and thanks for introducing this movie because, like I said, I felt like I'd seen it before, but now I've got the full picture.
Listen, people are going to listen to this episode, and they're going to agree with me. That's all I have to say. In the end, I will be right.
No, we do thank you for your opinions, and we thank you, the lords, ladies, and knights of the Retro Movie Roundtable. We invite you to reach out to us. We want to hear from you. Subscribe, rate, and review us on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, Google Podcasts, Pandora, or wherever you get your podcasts. Subscribe to our YouTube channel. Give us a like on Facebook. Follow us on Instagram and Twitter at movie_retro. Email us at retromovieroundtable@yahoo.com. Producing and providing this podcast is fun but not free. We invite you to support the show at our Patreon page at www.patreon.com/retromovieroundtable. Any contribution is much appreciated and will go towards making the show better for you, the listeners. As always, thank you for listening. Be good to each other and watch more movies. Bryan?
Numbers do not lie. Politics, poetry, promises, these are lies. Numbers are the closest thing we get to the handwriting of God.